What's going on, everyone? This is Zach back here with another episode of Clutch Crew Sports. And here on today's episode, the NBA is finally back. Obviously, it's been playing during the whole NFL playoffs, but we decided to just dedicate a whole episode to talking about some of the biggest topics going on in the NBA right now. So I hope you guys like that. And also remember, if you want to get into contact with any of us, the best way to do that would be on Twitter. Our links will all be in the descriptions below, so go ahead and follow us on Twitter. And yeah, hopefully you guys enjoy the show. Now let me introduce you to the rest of the crew.
What's going on, y'all? Eric, your ranting co-host here, and even though my Thunder haven't been amazing this season or anything, I'd say we're still performing above expectations, and I'm just glad to finally be talking some NBA again. It has been a little bit.
What's going on, guys? It is Connor, the co-host with the most, and thankfully the Hornets are actually exceeding expectations this year. I don't think I'll have to be taking a walk and eating a taco anytime soon, so or reading a book. So definitely excited to be talking about that and getting back into NBA talk, like Eric said.
Yeah, definitely. So around the hoop, we haven't seen this in quite a while because we've been so caught up and busy with covering the NFL playoffs, which were interesting. I think last year's NFL playoffs were a bit better as far as competitive games, but either way, we're here talking about the NBA on this episode, and there's been a lot of different storylines that have happened that we didn't get to cover at the time. So this is going to kind of involve some current stuff as well as some topics that we might have missed about a month or so ago. But anyways, let me go ahead and ask you guys the first question, and I'll get your opinions on this question. And I'm really interested to see what you guys have to say. But the Brooklyn Nets, obviously, after trading for James Harden, it's been noticeable that their defense has gotten really bad. I have on YouTube
Zach,
a graphic.
Don't you know that James Harden's like the greatest defender of all time?
Yeah, he gets all the steals, right? But yeah, so and another thing too, which is funny, I heard people from the Cavaliers and other teams, not even major star players, just kind of role players and stuff. They're saying they're looking at the schedule and being like, "Sweet, we play the Nets. This is when we can get a career high." Like that's what they're thinking. These guys out of nowhere have career highs against the Nets defense, and on the graphic here on YouTube, it's bad. See, 140. They lost, gave up 147 in double overtime to Cleveland, 128 to Miami, 132 to Atlanta in overtime, 125 to OKC. So these are some really high scores, and obviously they've got a high-powered offense. But do you guys think that the Nets should make a trade to address this? Or if they don't make a trade, do you think it'll get better or get worse throughout the season and more importantly into the playoffs? So I'll start with Eric first. What do you think about that, Eric? A trade, or does it get better or worse?
Yeah, I mean, I would like to see them make a trade, but my problem is I don't really know what they could give up to make a trade happen, because obviously they're not getting rid of Harden, Kyrie, or KD. I mean, that's obvious. And then they gave up a lot of their, better role players and pretty much all their draft capital when they got Harden. So I don't really know what they could do. I don't know if maybe it's just that since it's still the regular season, they're just playing kind of lackadaisical, and maybe they're going to step it up come playoff time and play a little bit better, because they've had a couple of good games defensively. Like they had the one game against Miami where they held them to 85, and of course all the Nets fans on Twitter went crazy after that one. They're like, "See, our defense is good," and yeah, that doesn't matter because they still had all the horrible games. And then they had that one good game against the Pacers too. They held them under 100, but it is obviously concerning how bad they have been doing defensively. But ultimately, I think it's going to be okay, because I think, like I said, I think once the playoffs start, while they may not be a great defense, I do think they will try harder and step up their game a little bit and do a little bit better. And then they also have the benefit of the fact that they do play in the Eastern Conference, which is I mean, obviously the West has been better than the East pretty much my entire life, but uh, the East is just really bad right now, and so I think they will be okay. But obviously, I still am a little concerned about it, though.
Yeah, so Connor, do you agree with Eric, or do you think that they should, find whatever they can to get a defensive player to add to their rotation?
Yeah, I definitely agree with him that I do think that they need to make a trade. I mean, I do understand what Eric was saying that, they don't really have a lot that they can offer, but I do think they should do whatever they can to go out and find somebody. It doesn't have to be a superstar defensive player of the year candidate or anything like that, but, it has to be, it just needs to get better because, I mean, we saw it in the NFL this season. Defense wins championships. And, while yes, they are playing in the weaker Eastern Conference right now where there's only like 3 or 4 teams that have a winning record at the moment. It's really damaging in my opinion to their championship hopes because obviously, going into this season, they were heavy title favorites, with KD and Kyrie, and they became even bigger title favorites with, James Harden joining the fray. Like, probably the only team that was a bigger title favorite than them in going into the season was the Lakers to repeat. But, I think it's really damaging to their title hopes because you're going to get to the finals, and I do think that they will easily cruise past the Eastern Conference. Like, I don't see anybody in the East beating them in the playoffs because like Eric said, they will wake up and do better in the playoffs because right now, especially with how bad the East is, they can kind of afford to take it easy because, they're unless they completely collapse, they're not going to miss the playoffs. So, they need to win a couple more games because you want to have that home court advantage throughout the playoffs. But I think it's when they finally get to the championship, whoever it may be, whether it be Utah or LA, well, either LA team really, whether it be the Lakers, the Clippers, whether it be Phoenix, whether it be any of these teams in the West, I don't know. I see a sweep in the future. Maybe not a sweep, but like maybe a 5-game NBA Finals if they continue to play defense like this. Players like Kawhi and PG and LeBron. Well, PG outstanding because we know how playoff P plays, but like LeBron and AD, like they will just eat up this Nets defense, and they're not going to be able to score enough to get back at these teams. And some of these other teams, they're good defending teams that could contain these players. AD can contain Kevin Durant, and I'm sure Kawhi can contain Kevin Durant. So it's a serious problem that probably wouldn't affect them in the East, but definitely, in my opinion, would affect them in the NBA championship. So go out and do whatever you can, find whatever draft capital that someone might be interested in or some other player. I don't know who, but
Yeah.
try whatever you can to get a defensive player on this team and get it a little bit better.
Yeah, I definitely agree more with Connor on this one. I think they have to do it because this is that D'Antoni system, and those D'Antoni teams never.
I should have said that, like they're turning into the Rockets, basically.
Yeah, they never win the championship, and it's because they're missing that defensive piece. But we'll move on now and let Eric bring up a question for us to answer. So Eric, go ahead.
Yeah, so my first question, we'll switch over to the Western Conference here. And if you're looking at the Utah Jazz, they're sitting in first place in the Western Conference right now. And usually they're a team that hovers around the 4 and 5 seeds, somewhere in there. So, but they're sitting there at the top of the West with a 22-5 record. They've been playing lights out lately. I think they're like 9-1 in their last 10 games I saw. So my question is, are the Jazz for real? Do you really think that they could be a serious title contender and team to come out of the West? Or do you think they're going to cool off and kind of fall back down a little bit? So what do you think about the Utah Jazz?
All right, I'll start. To answer your question, no, I don't think so. They're a good story right now. They're doing really well. If they had the playoffs to start right now, I might say yes, but we still have a long way to go. They've only played 27 games so far. So while it's a good sign for the Jazz, I think they're definitely exceeding expectations for me. And it seems like they are building a really good season right now. I still would not expect them to win the West. And I think there's several other teams that could beat them. And it's going to be important for them to keep this up. Obviously, 22-5 is incredible, but they're going to need home court, and they're on track to do that. But even still, even if they had home court, I just personally I don't think I could pick them to be either the Lakers, Clippers, maybe the Suns. I wouldn't say against the Trailblazers, and some other West teams. That Denver's still Denver. It's just there's so many really good teams in the West, and their record is really good right now. But injuries can happen. You never know what can happen. I just don't. I see the record and everything, but I just don't see this being a finals team and a championship team. But Connor, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of see this team. I mean, I'm definitely in agreement. In a way, I would almost try and compare them to the Bucks in a way in the East, right? How the Bucks were
Yeah.
this team that they were always so dominant in the regular season, and Giannis would put up these huge numbers and blah 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 blah, and everybody's like, oh, okay, me myself included last season, but everyone's like, oh, the Bucks are gonna win the title, like they're looking like the best team, and then they get to the playoffs and you know they do horribly. So I think, unfortunately for Jazz fans, I think that will happen to this team too. I don't see them beating the Lakers right now or the Clippers. And like you said, there's just all those other teams in the West. Definitely if I was them, I'd feel a lot better if I was in the East, because if they were in the Eastern Conference, then I think they could blow through. I think they could beat the Nets
Oh
right
yeah.
now. They could beat the Pacers, the Celtics, the Bucks. I mean, I don't know if they beat the Sixers right now, but they could blow through pretty much almost anybody in the East. But like you said, with the West, like the Lakers, the Clippers, the Trailblazers, the Spurs are playing really well right now. I'd probably pick the Jazz to beat the Spurs, but obviously the Spurs are there, and you mentioned the Nuggets, so I just don't see it happening for them, unfortunately. Maybe, who knows, anything can happen, but
Yeah.
I mean, if you ask me this question like 20 or 30 games from now and they're still atop the West, then I might start to believe a little bit more, but not right now. I still see the Lakers and Clippers as the favorites in the West.
Yeah, and let me really quickly ask Eric, because you brought up this question. Do you see the Jazz as the best team in the West, or are you in agreement with Connor and I?
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty much in agreement. I don't see them as the best team right now, but the only thing I will say, like, while this isn't going to be like a huge injury for now, Anthony Davis is dealing
Yeah.
with an injury, and he's looks like he's going to miss 2, maybe 3 weeks. And so it'll be interesting to see how the Lakers do. And then, of course, with the Clippers resting PG and Kawhi all the time, like, I could see them getting the number 1 seed. And so, like, if they can get the number 1 seed, then that could make things a little more interesting. But like kind of like what Connor talked about with the Bucks, like it reminds me of back in the day, like in the East, like the Hawks always seem to be really good in the regular season for some reason. And
Yeah, I
one year
thought
they
about
even got
that. Yeah.
one year they even got the number 1 seed, and it was like, oh my God, maybe they're gonna take down LeBron, and then the Cavs
Yeah.
still like swept them, I think. So like, but I mean, if you're a Jazz fan, I mean, this is an exciting time because this is the best they've been playing in a really long time. So I do have to give them a lot of credit, because I thought I'd heard in the past that there was tension with like Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert and stuff after the whole COVID thing, and then the fact that the Jazz gave Gobert that huge contract and him and Mitchell are still playing together. Like, I really wasn't expecting anything out of the Jazz. So for them to be playing as good as they are, like, I do have to give them a lot of credit. But I am more like on the side as Connor, though. Like, maybe 30 more games from now, we'll see if they're still doing this and revisit it. But
Yeah.
I still don't see them beating the Lakers or Clippers.
Yep. So we all agree with that one. Let's go ahead and hear Connor ask a question. Question number 3.
Yeah, well, it's going to be my favorite question because actually getting to talk about my team here. Honestly, going into the season, I of course had my high hopes for the Hornets. I did pick them to finish second in the division, but if they turned back into the old Hornets, then I wouldn't have been surprised either. But they've been a bit of a surprise this year, the Charlotte Hornets, and right now they are in first place in the Southeast Division, still with a losing record. But like I said earlier, there's only like 3 teams in the East that have a winning record. It's like the Nets, the Sixers, and the Bucks are the only ones that do. So, but with that being said, can the Hornets keep up the success that they're having right now and win the Southeast Division for the first time in their history? I guess I'll start with Eric.
Yeah, I absolutely think they can. I mean, we were kind of talking about this a little bit before the podcast started, and well, I know Connor still hates Gordon Hayward's contract that he got. He is doing pretty good for them right now, and then they also have the Timberwolves and Warriors to thank for letting LaMelo Ball fall into their lap. He's playing at a Rookie of the Year level. I'd still like to see his jump shot get a little better, but he's putting up numbers and doing good things for them. And the Hornets also just have the benefit of the fact that their division is really, really bad. So they're kind of like the NFC East of football, so any team could win it. But I mean, the Hornets are kind of the surprise, though, kind of like in the NFC East, even though we knew that wasn't going to be a good division, we were like, oh, it's going to be the Cowboys or the Eagles, but nobody thought Washington was going to get it. Even it looked like the Giants could maybe get it. Nobody was expecting Washington to get it. So kind of the same thing with this season. Even though this division isn't that good, I don't think anybody was looking at it and thinking, oh, I think the Hornets can win the division. So I give the Hornets a lot of credit, and as a fan of a fellow struggling team like in the Thunder, I am happy for Connor that his Hornets are doing well, and I hope that they can keep it up, and I think they can.
Okay, well, you might not like what I have to say here, but if the question is can they win the Southeast, and it's not like that really matters. I mean, you get the banner, I think, but as far as the seeding goes, it's not like the NFL where they have the division winners at the top. So it's really, I mean, theoretically they could win the division and miss the playoffs still, but I don't see that happening. But
actually, doesn't the division winner automatically get in no matter what?
Well, I don't think we've ever had a scenario where that.
That's what I'm saying. I don't think we've ever had a scenario like that, but I think in the rules, the division winner does get in every time.
Yeah, maybe. But that'd be a crazy scenario. But yeah, so they definitely can. Now, this is still just a small sample size because we're in mid-February, but if I had to just pick who I think would win, I'd still say the Heat. I mean, these teams are all clustered in the standings right now. Like, you see the Hornets here at the 6th seed, 5.5 games back from the 1 seed. But then, like, the 10 seed is only 1 game back, the Hawks here. I guess technically 2, because they'd have to win 2 more games to tie the Hornets. But still, this is really close margins. And with a young team like this, it's hard to trust them. I'm just trying to say I trust the Heat more to get it back together a little bit. I know we have a Heat-related question, so I'm not going to spoil what I think about the Heat. But sorry, guys, if you hear a loud sound, that's like a neighbor's washing machine or something. Not washing machine, laundry, laundry or dryer thing going on.
Wash your clothes some other time, neighbor.
Yeah.
You're messing this up.
I don't know how bad it sounds, but hopefully it's going down now. But
I can't really hear it.
Okay, that's good. It was actually really loud when Eric was talking, so I was glad that you had Eric go first. And I was able to mute myself. But anyways, I just trust the Heat more. I think they've got a lot more veteran players that have been there, and they'll play each other a couple more times. And the thing with the Hornets is I still have really high expectations for them. I think they can be good. It's just I think it's a year too soon to say this. And I said at the beginning of the draft, LaMelo Ball was going to be the best player, and he's definitely turning out to be so. And another guy too, Tyrese Halliburton on the Kings, is doing really well. That was another draft steal that I said after the draft was going to happen. So yeah, I think the Hornets, they can. Obviously, they're in first place right now, but it's really, I think, a 3-team race between the Hornets, the Heat, and the Hawks. And I'll just take a minute here to talk about how bad the Orlando Magic are doing. I mean, 2021 has not been good at all for them. They have a terrible record in 2021. Things are going really, really poorly, and I wouldn't be surprised to see if they blew it up and traded Vooch to some contender and just blew it up. They're playing like doo-doo right now.
Trade it to the Hornets. Trade him to the Hornets.
No, actually, I watched the game, and it was the Hornets. I saw the Hornets broadcasters, and they were saying, they were talking about Vooch, and they said Vooch always has his career highs against the Hornets. Like he dominates the Hornets every time they play. But yeah,
probably because you got Bismack Babumbo guarding.
Yeah, probably. Zeller, Cody Zeller, right?
Yep, and Zeller too. Yeah,
but yeah, so they're playing terrible, and then the Wizards are even worse. Thank God we're not as bad as the Wizards, but they're looking like they're going to get the number one pick, or at least be in that position in the lottery, standings to get that number one pick. So those two teams, I would say, I'll give, since Orlando made the playoffs last year, I'll give them a few more weeks, but if they keep the pace that they're on right now, I'm going to say they're eliminated from the playoffs, and the Wizards, I think, are already eliminated. So it's between the. I mean, look at how many games have they won? Like five or six. Yeah, so five. You can count that on one hand.
In case if anybody,
in
case if anybody thought that triple doubles translates to wins, look no further than the Washington Wizards. Okay, I can rest my case right there.
Russell Westbrook, he's gonna break the all-time record for triple doubles. He's so great.
Well, the Wizards are. I guess it's the rest of the team then, because I don't know what to say.
But the Hawks are another good team too. That I thought the Hawks would be better. And they still have a chance to. So that's another contender to overtake the Hornets right now. So I think it's a 3-team race: Hornets, Heat, and Hawks, the 3 H's. But I will say right now, I think the Hornets would finish second over the Hawks. It's going to be close, I think, but I still, at the end of the day, I do think the Heat will get it together enough to win enough to overtake the Hornets, and I do think that the Hornets, as a young team, are going to go through a stretch where they lose a couple games and don't keep up the momentum, because they're winning games that we didn't think they would be winning, which is quite surprising. But I guess I'll turn the tables now and ask Connor, since this is his team. What do you think about the Hornets' chances? Obviously, playoffs are looking like a real possibility. So
yeah, hopefully.
So that's good.
But yeah, no, I mean, I definitely agree what you were saying with what you were saying about the Heat. They're a veteran team. I mean, I almost see the Hornets and Hawks as mirror images of each other in a way. Like, they're both these young, up and coming teams that, like you said, maybe next season you'll see them. I do really think next season it will be a fight between the Hornets and Hawks for the division. But I do agree, actually, that I don't foresee them keeping this up. I think they'll keep it up enough to get the playoffs, maybe sneak in as that 7 or 8 seed. But I would give the Heat a better chance at the moment, just because I know, even though LaMelo Ball and Gordon Hayward are playing great, I know there's some other people on the team. PJ Washington's been playing really bad.
He's been he's hurt here. He has COVID right now. But,
right. He has COVID right now, but from the games that I've seen, he's been playing pretty bad. I know Devontae Graham really hasn't been playing fantastically. It's more so been Terry Rozier that's been stepping up at the point guard spot, which, before the season, I was thinking that they were going to trade him, but now it's looking like Graham is the worst point guard on the team. So, it's going to be interesting to see, but I do agree that I think I would give the Heat a better chance.
Yeah. All right, so we'll move it back up now, and I'll ask you guys the second question that I've made, and we'll go back to the Western Conference here, and I want to talk about really the Warriors and Steph Curry. And the Warriors currently are 14-13 and are the 8th seed in the West, and they're doing about where I thought they would be, maybe slightly underachieving, but the West is a lot tougher, so 500 in the West is not a bad thing. So they've obviously been carried by Steph, averaging 30 a game, and it's still really, really early. But everybody has MVP discussions, even this early in February. So I thought, since Steph has won 2 MVPs before, what shot do you guys give him to win a third this year? And what do you think it's going to take? Do the Warriors have to just make the playoffs? Do they have to be a top seed, get home court? Like, what do you think it would take for the Warriors' success for Steph to get MVP and Steph himself to obviously keep this up? So I'll start with Eric. And do you think he can do it too?
My odds for him winning MVP are probably more on the lower side right now. I don't necessarily think he can't get it or that he won't get it, but while he is obviously the face of that team, and oh god, now I'm hearing a weird noise outside. Sorry. Okay. It's gone. Somebody was revving up their car, but anyway, man, that totally threw me off. But yeah, I don't think he has the greatest odds to do it. I am going to need to see a little bit more from him. Obviously, like Zach's got on the screen that he's averaging the 29 points per game, which is very good, but I just still don't see it right now. I mean, like Zach said, though, it is early, so I'm not like completely ruling him out or anything. But one thing, though, that I do think does benefit him is the fact that he's, playing pretty much like every game, whereas, you get a lot of these other players that are resting and doing things like that. And so just by him being available every game, like that is huge. And I've liked his ability of like getting his teammates more involved, because the Warriors really struggled at the beginning of the season, and they are playing better. Like while they're barely above 500, if you look at their record over the last, like half of their games instead of the first half of the games, they are doing better. But for right now, though, I still don't see it. There's other people that I still have above him, but if he starts playing phenomenal, though, then he'll definitely get back in there for sure.
All right, same question for Connor. Yeah, for me, Wall, I think for me personally, if he could lead the Warriors to, I wouldn't say they would have to be number one, but if he could lead them to like at least the 4 seed this season, with the way that, especially not just the West, but like the Pacific Division as a whole, if he could lead them to the 4 seed, then in my opinion, that would definitely put him in the race for MVP. But I think definitely what's going to hold him back more than anything is just the performance of other players. Because, I mean, obviously, we all know LeBron James is going to be in the talks. I mean, a lot of people have him as the front runner right now. He's always going to be in the talks no matter what, unless he were to just completely collapse. LeBron James is going to be in the conversation. Him and his flopping, because, Grayson Allen just totally destroyed him the other night.
I know. It's like, how do you ever feel sorry for Grayson Allen or any sympathy at all? But LeBron made that happen. I couldn't believe it.
Oh, I know.
Yeah.
Especially me being a UNC fan. Like, I have zero sympathy for Grayson Allen, but I was just like, really, bro? But yeah, and then I think that's gonna, like I said, LeBron James is gonna be in the conversation. Obviously, with how well the Sixers are playing. I mean, I know we have a question about this later too, but with how well the Sixers are playing, and if they can keep it going, then Joel Embiid is gonna be in there. I mean, possibly at the top. If the Sixers keep it up, then I think Joel Embiid's gonna be at the top, as long as he doesn't get hurt again, which is always a possibility. Nikola Jokic right now is pretty much being, the face of the Nuggets and keeping the Nuggets in the playoff hunt. So, and then obviously Kevin Durant and Kawhi, the other usual suspects. So I just think it's going to be a lot of the other players that are going to keep him back from it, unless he really can take the Warriors to like a top 4 seed, maybe even like a top 3 seed. Because I don't think, I mean, I know you said this before last season when we were talking about the MVPs, and I locked Giannis to win it. And you were saying how you weren't going to pick him because you're like, it's really hard to win another MVP, especially after you've won unless your name is LeBron James, it's really hard to win multiple MVPs, and especially even win a third one. because you've already won it, and they're going to give it to someone else because you can make arguments for a lot of players as to why they should get it, but winning previous MVPs tends to knock you down the list. And guys like Giannis and Steph, who have won it multiple times, they're going to be in the conversation, but they're not going to be the front runners. Like I said, unless your name's LeBron James, you're not going to be at the top. So, and the other thing is too, I mean, back to with the Warriors, I don't think he's going to be able to take the Warriors to that. I've never thought of Steph Curry as like, one of those types of players that, okay, he's going to be the guy to carry this team and, bring them. I mean, LeBron kind of as much as I like to hate him, and we all like to hate him, he did pretty much single-handedly carry that Cavs team to the championship that last season he was in Cleveland. So, and I've never seen Steph Curry as a player that could do that. I've never seen him as like a LeBron or a Giannis or a, MJ kind of player. Like, these people are going to carry their team forward. I don't see Steph Curry doing that. I think the Warriors, they're going to stay muddled in that 8 seed conversation, and I don't know if they're going to be able to break out of it.
Yeah, I think I'd agree with you guys. I don't think it'll happen, but I do think if I had to like right now pick a top 3, I would probably say LeBron. It is, I won't say in any particular order, but him, LeBron, like Steph, LeBron, and what was Embiid, was one of the people like it was one. Embiid, yeah. So so those would be my top 3 right now, just because the big benefit for Steph, and I do think what you're talking about, how he has won 2 MVPs before, at least for his sake, that was several years ago. And it's not fresh in everybody's minds, like Giannis is back-to-back. So for him to win a third, he would have to be incredible, even better than.
Yeah, I mean, he's definitely not on track for that right now. So,
gotta shoot better free throws, Giannis first. But
I know I've been trying to work on him with that, man, but he just. It's not happening right now.
Giannis' agent we have here. By
he
the way.
needs to. You're going to tell him, Connor. He needs to punish himself even more when he misses free throws or something. I heard he has some punishment he gives himself if he misses them, but it's obviously not working.
No, he's losing me money.
But the big benefit for Steph in my mind is that he's doing this with really no other All-Stars except for Draymond was a former All-Star, but that's it.
Not really an All-Star anymore.
No, so. Yeah, not looking. But I knew when I said that I'd get a reaction from Eric. But I think it's just we'll see what happens with the West. But all these other guys, like LeBron's had AD, and Embiid's got Simmons and Tobias Harris and Seth Curry, and all these other guys have really good teams, whereas Steph doesn't have Clay, and KD's not there anymore. So we'll see what happens, and I think if he keeps this his scoring up, that's going to be the thing for him. Like he could win an MVP just off of his scoring, and if he's efficient. So we'll see, because he's done that before when he was the unanimous MVP. It was definitely because of his scoring. For other players, they have to involve their defensive game or their facilitating. But for Steph, he can single-handedly do it himself. But I do think this award generally is also a team award. So like you guys said, I do think they'll have to be, if they get up to a top 4 seed, nobody would have seen that coming. And then that's going to be like a huge storyline that they were a top 4 seed because of Steph. And I think honestly that would give him a lot more respect than what he's currently had, even if they don't win a championship, because this is the first time we've really seen him have to carry the team, because of last season he was injured basically all the season. So it's really interesting to see how he does. And can't forget Dame from the MVP conversation too. He's definitely in it as well. But
yeah. Zach's not going to let us forget that.
No. So we'll move on now and let Eric ask his second question. So Eric, go ahead.
Yeah, so we kind of alluded to this a little bit earlier with the Hornets, but obviously the Miami Heat are, off to a poor start considering how they ended up last year with that 11-15 record right now. Do you think that they're having like a bit of a Super Bowl hangover and that's why they're struggling? Or do you think maybe there's like some other kind of reason why they're struggling? And then also, do you think they're going to be able to turn it around and get back on track? Or do you think they'll continue to struggle?
I'll let Connor start because the washing machine's going off again.
Yeah, no, I think with the Heat, I mean, I will say I didn't exactly have super high expectations for them this year because I'm pretty sure I mentioned this when we did our NBA preview that I saw the Heat more of like as one of those, they were just kind of more of a Cinderella story. Like they kind of didn't really deserve to be there in a way. Like they didn't have the best team. They didn't, blah, 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 blah. I think they were just really able to take advantage of, the situation in the bubble and they just really, they peaked at the right time. There was definitely teams in the East that I would have thought should have gotten over them, like the Bucks and the Raptors and the Celtics. So I think last year was kind of like a Cinderella story, like kind of like a feel-good thing for, Jimmy Butler finally made it to the championship. Like, obviously they didn't win, but, Jimmy Butler finally made it, and, Bam Adebayo starting to come along and blah, 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 blah. But, now I think this is really more so the team that they were supposed to be. I think they're playing a little bit worse than we thought that they should. But I figured that they would be, kind of hovering around, a 500 mark or, well, I guess with the way the East is right now, I say they'd be hovering around a 500 mark. But I thought that they'd be kind of hovering around that 5 or 6 or maybe even like a 7 seed when it came to them winning the division. I just see a lot of teams in the East that are better than them. So I think they can turn it around because, like we mentioned this before, that they have the veteran team. Butler's been around the block. Goran Dragic is hurt right now, but he's been around the block. This team knows what it's like, and they know how to feel the pressure. They still have Andre Iguodala. He's been around forever. Won multiple championships, so they're not going to panic in the big situations and the big games. Like, okay, we really need to win this game. Like, this is an important game. If we don't win this, then whatever happens. But, they're not going to panic. Whereas a team like the Hornets and the Hawks, with all their young players, the moment might get too big for them. The moment won't get too big for this team. So I can definitely see them clawing their way back. If they miss the playoffs, I think it would shock me. But I definitely could see them as one of those, a potential first round exit or, maybe if they do make it past the first round, then they're not getting past the second round. So, but I do think that they will rebound.
Yeah, it's rare that I agree with Connor so much in one episode, but I'm basically 100%.
Probably because we're not talking about the NFL. That's probably why.
Yeah, you're right. But still, it's shocking how you stole every word that I was going to say. But I'll add this. There was a lot of talk last year that the Heat were only in the finals because of the bubble environment and they had the right stuff at the right time, didn't have to go on the road. They were like a 4 or 5 seed, so they would have had to go to Milwaukee, they would have had to go to Boston, but they got to stay in the same building every night. So all that talk that was about the Heat being the bubble Heat, and we saw other teams do really well in the bubble. Like, remember when the Suns won every game? They haven't won every game this season. They're doing really well, but still, they're not number one in the West. So I think, and I'm guilty of this though, because unlike Connor, I did have them in the Eastern Conference Finals. But that was more so I was thinking that they were a good team that had a good culture, and I didn't really see any of these other East teams being as well. And the East is still so bad that I think they could, make a playoff run again, but they're by no means favorites. And I do think that they will make the playoffs. Like I said, I had them winning the Southeast when we talked about the Hornets.
I think we all actually had them winning at the beginning of the season too.
yeah, we did. But right now, when you look at things, it's not pretty. The headline here that I've clipped out is kind of funny. We were ragging on the Wizards earlier. This one says, the Miami Heat hit a new low by falling to the Washington Wizards, the worst team in the NBA.
Well, speaking of the Wizards too, they're beating the Rockets right now. So
that that's a rivalry game for a lot of people in that one.
John Wall versus Russ.
Yeah. But the thing with the Heat, I basically last year they just had a lot of people that really overperformed, and we really overestimated the length of that success. So when you think about like a Super Bowl hangover, I do think it's similar, but also too, I don't think that they were really talented enough and deserving to be in the finals last year. I just it should have been two West teams. I think, I think they got in because they were in the East, and they had all the lucky breaks that happened to them in the playoffs, and I just think it was like a whole Cinderella story, like Connor said last year in the bubble. And it really made us think that they were better than they really are. And now when they have a regular season, they have to go travel. Stuff doesn't go their way. They're 11-15, which is worse than I'd expected. But I didn't expect them to be super great, anyways. So it's a little disappointing, but they, it's not over yet. I think they make the playoffs, and I think they have a first round exit, which would be a disappointment for the Heat. But but Eric, what do you think? Since you brought this up.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty much in agreement here as well. I mean, the only thing I will say that I know they've gotten a lot of excuses made for them with this, but they have been without Jimmy Butler for a lot of the games. Like he is back now, but they were without him for a little while. And obviously, when pretty much any team is without their best player, like they could struggle. But I mean, like you guys said, I mean, they still haven't been a great team overall, though. But I do think, like, for example, like the Knicks are sitting at the 7th seed right now. Like, I don't think they're going to stay there. I think they're kind of overachieving right now. So like they will yeah, they will. Nick Rue, if you listen to it, sorry, man. Yeah, like sorry, Nick Rue, if you're listening to us, sorry, man. I just don't see your Knicks staying there. But so I mean, I do think the Heat are going to get in the playoffs. But I mean, I think like what Zach said, though, first round exit is probably the most likely, or since the East is pretty bad right now, like maybe they get to the second round. But I don't see them, getting back to where they were last year. I'm in agreement with you guys.
Yeah. So let's go now to our sixth and final question and hear what Connor has in store.
Yeah. So, if you guys were listening to us last year, a lot of the people on the podcast last year, we were really high on the 76ers last year. We thought they had that all-star lineup with Simmons, Harris, Horford, Embiid, and Jay Rich. Most of us had them in the Eastern Conference Finals. Zach and Nate had them in the NBA Finals. I can't remember if Zach actually picked them to win or if you picked the Lakers. I can't remember. But
no, I didn't. I had them losing.
Okay. Yeah. But anyway, so yeah, like we had them in the NBA Finals, and then they pretty much turned into the laughing stock of the East last year. Like, not so much in the way that they lost a lot of their games, but like, this was supposed to be a juggernaut team that was, supposed to do great things. And then, here they come only being like the 6th seed entering the playoffs. And then obviously the first round exit, which we all predicted would happen once we got there. We all said the Sixers would have a first round exit. So, but now they're looking like, possibly they've turned it around. They're sitting on top of the East ahead of everybody else. So, have the Sixers did the off season and getting everybody healthy and everything, have they finally turned into this really good team that we all thought that they would be? So I'll let Zach go first on this one.
Okay, so
no washing machine.
Hopefully not. Okay, so the 76ers, to me, it's really a mirror image to what the Jazz are doing right now in the West, in my opinion. We talked about the Jazz earlier. Not as good of a record, but the 76ers 18-9. They have some flaws because I was watching part of this game that they played against the Trailblazers recently, and they were at the Portland Trailblazers were on like a 5-game road trip, a back-to-back at Philadelphia. They had no Dame, no CJ, no Nurkic. They had 7 players, had to start second round draft pick CJ Ellaby and Damian Lillard's like cousin, who's only on the team because he's his cousin, or some sort of family relationship. It's the only reason he's on the team. Shouldn't be in the NBA. He had to
like
play
Costas
like 10 minutes.
Antetokounmpo and
Yeah,
whatnot.
exactly. Um, so they had to play those 7 people, and they won by like 12, 15 points. And the 76ers basically were at full strength. So that shows to me that that's the 76ers of old. They're number one in the East right now, but still, they I don't even see them getting past Boston. Like they lose to Boston every year in the playoffs. It seems like I would pick Boston, even though they're having their struggles right now. I would still pick Boston to beat them. I would probably pick Milwaukee, Brooklyn, Indiana, all of these other 4 teams on the list to beat them, even though they have the 1 seed right now. And I do think home court's going to mean a lot because it seems like having to travel and go through all the COVID protocols and everything like that is definitely an advantage for the home team, even without the fans. It's an advantage to be a home team, but still, I would probably have to say no. I mean, the move of bringing in Seth Curry, I think, has been good for them. They're getting finally some shooting on this team, which is what they desperately needed. So I think they're better than they were last year. They could surprise me still, but I don't see it. I don't see them being better than Boston. So Eric, what do you think? Do you agree with me, or do you think more highly of the 76ers than I do?
I agree with you to an extent, but I view the 76ers higher than what you do. I mean, obviously that, game with Portland when Portland was down all their players. I mean, obviously that's a bad loss, but teams in the NBA constantly lose games they should win and vice versa. You know, you're never going to see a team go 82-0 or anything like that. So I'm not too worried about that one game. But I do agree with you in the sense that I still don't see this team like coming out of the East. I do think they're playing better than where they should be, I guess, if that makes sense. They're the number 1 seed right now, but I don't think they are the best team in the East. But I do have to disagree though in terms of like who I think they would beat or not beat. I know they've had their struggles with Boston, but Boston just hasn't been as good this year. And Indiana, I'm still not really worried about them. And even the Bucks, just with the way, if Giannis keeps playing like the way he has in the playoffs, I don't think the Bucks could beat the 76ers, but I still ultimately think the Nets are a better team though. And so I don't see the 76ers coming out of the East, but I think what's been the biggest difference for them is while Embiid has always been like a good player, he is playing on a whole nother level this year that he has not played at before. And also getting rid of Al Horford and getting more guys to space the floor, I think has been better. Al Horford, while I initially thought at the time that would be a good signing for them, I ended up being totally wrong about that, and that completely backfired. So him not being there is actually, even though he's a good player, him not being there is actually helping the 76ers. And in addition to Embiid playing better, Tobias Harris is also having a pretty good season as well. So between him, Embiid, and Simmons, all 3 playing at a pretty good level, I do think that even though they've got a lot of the same players, I do think this is I still think this team has a different feel to it. And also I give their coaching staff a lot of credit because they have gotten obviously a huge upgrade at the coaching position going into the season. I think they're getting a lot more out of their players. Obviously, like I said, with Embiid and Harris playing better, they're getting a lot more out of everybody than they've been in the past. So I do think much more highly of the 76ers than Zach, but I do still have their ceiling at Eastern Conference Final loss. That's where I think that's the farthest they get. So Connor,
Right,
what do you think?
Yeah, I was gonna ask Connor. Yeah, no.
Yeah, so oddly enough, I'm once again going to agree with Zach.
Let's go.
I mean,
dang, I'm the one that's been different tonight.
I mean, I know, Eric, I betrayed you. Sorry.
All good, man, all good.
But I mean, I kind of see them just as the best in a terrible conference at the moment. I just don't. I think all of these teams in their own special way, are kind of equally mediocre. And you can see by their records for the most part. But I just feel like it's going to fall apart at some point. I feel like this is just a brief glimpse of, if they could somehow manage to hold it together, this is what they could be. But I just don't see it happening. At some point, something's going to happen, and Embiid's probably going to get hurt again because he always gets hurt, or like Simmons is going to get hurt again, or whatever is going to happen to this team, and they're just going to all of a sudden take a turn for the worse and be headed for a first round exit. I agree mostly with Zach about the teams that could beat them. I definitely think that the Bucks and the Nets can beat them. I'm not so sure about the Pacers if they could beat them just yet. But I definitely think the Celtics have it in them to turn it around enough to, to turn around and beat them too. Because the Celtics, they have a lot of talent on that team that, they have underperformed this year so far. But, when you have that much talent, it's just not something that is going to, you're not going to keep doing bad forever. So, I mean, they did lose to the Wizards, theme of teams losing to the Wizards here. But I definitely think the Celtics are gonna bring it back together. And like I said, I think I see the Sixers as just the best of a terrible conference. I would put them. I wouldn't go so far as to say first round exit, but I definitely don't see them getting to the Eastern Conference Finals. I'm feeling good about my initial Nets versus Bucks prediction at the moment. So
yeah.
So I heard, Connor, I heard that little attempt to ruin my NBA fantasy team with the Embiid injury comment there. I heard that.
Knock on wood.
Look, just because I have him on my team and I'm in first place doesn't mean you got to go trying to jinx my team like that, okay?
Well, don't worry. I made the mistake of forgetting to take Anthony Davis out of my lineup, so he's going to be getting 0 points all week for me. So.
Yeah, that's a really tricky situation because it's with his injury, it's like an Achilles flare up or something. It's not like an actual Achilles injury, but
it's like something he re-aggravated or something.
Yeah,
like that.
So it's like, man, if that happened, that would be a huge story if he was done for the year. But
Eric, I also in a way have to, be mad at you and jinx your fantasy team because you did steal Giannis from me in the draft. And that's why
true.
I had to change
That's
my
true.
team name,
I did. I will admit that one. I won't try to, run away or hide from that fact. I openly admit that I did steal. I stole your client from you, so I do apologize.
Yeah.
Is that why he's been missing his free throws? Like you were like, hey, Eric drafted you, miss some free throws so you get less points.
Still win the games, of course, but just miss some of those free throws.
Yeah, when you're up by 17, miss some of those free throws.
Yeah. That's I'd fire my agent right away if I heard him say that. But anyways, guys, hopefully you enjoyed this all NBA episode. We talked about a lot of different teams, so hopefully you enjoyed that. And next week we will be back to talk. We'll bring up an NBA related story with Around the Hoop, and we're also going to talk about some NFL players and do a game of this or that. So we've done an episode like that before. We're bringing it back with new players. Obviously, we're not going to have the same exact ones, but yeah, we'll play this or that. Nate will be back as well. So hopefully you guys enjoy that episode to come, and hopefully you enjoyed this one as well. And until then, be clutch.
Bye.
Peace.